Today, the New York Times announced they're filing a lawsuit against the Pentagon because of their restrictive press policy rules, in which they besmirch my good name because they are lying pieces of... I'm going to avoid swearing, as I often do. But this is the nature of politics. Squabbling high school mean girls, complaining all the time, and lying to try and get their way. I am so fed up. I am so past the point of no return on all of these political, I don't know what you want to call it, but I'll put it like this. Our country is cooked because these are children. Men are not in charge anymore. Okay, of our institutions, it's a bunch of whiny little girls. The Pentagon press agreement that we signed was like largely about parking. You can read it yourself. Where to park, when you can come in, what areas of the building the press are allowed to roam freely, and where they need an escort. And the big contentious issue that the press was all so butthurt about was you will not solicit classified information in the Pentagon. Okay, that sounds like a normal rule for anywhere. You want to come into the Timcast studio? Don't go ask for my bank details or for our plans. We have NDAs. Now, here's what really happens. I have not been to the Pentagon. I do not intend to go to the Pentagon. I am not getting a press pass for the Pentagon. That was never the case. We signed a press agreement because we want to do sometimes some interviews. We are not setting up an office. We're not taking over CNN's HQ. Elad Eliyahu, you love him or you hate him on Timcast IRL, asks pretty basic questions. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're light. It is what it is. He wants to be able to go and ask the Pentagon questions the same as he asks the White House. We are not investigative reporters. We're a podcast, and we have Elad go out and get information sometimes on the ground, but not really anymore. And in the White House, we have our members at timcast.com submitting questions. And we're working on this system. We want to get it right, where Elad can then ask the questions people want to know about. That's it. We've never been investigative reporters. And as I've stated from the beginning, should we come across any information that would put us at odds with the press policies, we will prioritize the public's right to know over the Pentagon. I don't care. So here's what's happened now. The media is lying about everything. The New York Times insults me personally in their lawsuit because they are pieces of trash. I am done being diplomatic. I am done playing these stupid games. Our world, our country is breaking apart because weak men will not stand. Now, there are many strong individuals who do stand. I'm not saying there's nobody, but I'm sick of this. Whiny, pathetic trash from the New York Times. You gonna cry about it? Keep my name out your mouth if you got a problem with Pete Hegseth, you scumbags. So we have this from the Daily Beast. November 29th, Pentagon Pete invites cherry-picked press lackeys for fancy tour. Indeed, there are many individuals who work for Timcast who did go to the Pentagon to get press credentials. Why? Sometimes we have questions. Principally, we have Elad Eliyahu and we have Brandon Miner. Now, Brandon works on Tales from the Inverted World with Shane Cashman. They cover stories about Bigfoot, aliens, data centers, the weird, the wild, the unseen. It's very much meant to be entertaining explorations and wacky ideas. It's not meant to be hard-hitting 2020, and it's not completely unserious. Brandon's a bit more of a skeptic, and Brandon is there because he's going to be asking questions that border on the what do we know and what do we don't know, and I think it's a great opportunity. We want to know about UAP disclosures and things like this, and that's a great opportunity. Elad, of course, has always asked very basic questions about foreign policy. Is the U.S. preparing to go to war with Venezuela? And if not, can you explain the warship's presence? What do you think may happen? Very basic stuff. But these people are evil high school mean girls. Case in point, this story from the Daily Beast. And then I'll jump to the lawsuit, and we'll talk about the New York Times insulting me. This is what they wrote the other day. Adam Downer, you crybaby loser. The Department of Defense set to welcome a new gaggle of press loyalists with a meet and greet. See, they're just lying. They're just lying. And I have to deal with this because these people are retarded scumbags. I go to the poker room and I sit down and I get this one guy, shout out, he's a nice guy, but he's like, you signed that loyalty pledge. And I'm like, I never signed a loyalty pledge, dude. I signed an agreement that says we won't solicit employees for classified information. We don't do that. It would be like asking me, the Pentagon said we won't change the oil of our car in the parking lot at the Pentagon. I'm like, yeah, I don't do that. I don't take whistleblower emails. I don't do any of that. We are a current events podcast. So if I go there, I'm going to get a day pass. And we're going to maybe do an interview with Hegseth. And I'm going to ask him all of this stuff. I'm going to ask him all about it. And he's going to talk all about it. It's a chance to get a long-form interview. Hey, guess what? 2020, 60 Minutes, they do the same thing. Does 2020 still exist? I don't even know. All right, let's say they said the MAGA press corps will pick up their press badges. I don't have one. Look at this one. Conservative podcaster Tim Pool, confirmed to be paid by Russian state media in 2024, has been invited to attend a Pentagon press fair. That's made up. You see what these people do? Well, they walk into it, I guess, because anybody who's paying attention knows there's an indictment, made an allegation that never was proven, and there's no evidence it ever happened. In fact, I will outright dispute it ever happened explicitly and say Merrick Garland made the whole thing up. And I will say this. I believe Merrick Garland made the whole thing up as an effort to try and cheat in the election. He wanted to smear prominent individuals. Look at me at AmFest. They wanted to smear prominent individuals who were supporting Donald Trump. Because in 2020, I was behind the Democrats 100% until Joe Biden became the nominee. And now, disaffected liberals, Dave Rubin used to be a liberal, whatever you want to call him, liberal, whatever you want to call me. Benny, actually, kind of. Isn't that kind of interesting, huh? And so that was their play, because they're lying scumbags. And they dropped the case almost immediately after, and it's against unnamed individuals no one ever heard of. But the Daily Beast are scumbags. So, of course, I love this. Tim Pool, who was busted for unwittingly. What? That I wasn't busted. What are you talking about? Anyway, this is the point. I wasn't there. Like, let me just say that again. Daily Beast, I wasn't there. It's remarkable how many of these news organizations lied, claiming I was at the Pentagon. Nope, been doing my show like normal. You want to make the argument that I had staff there? Sure, Elad's been at the White House too. Ask about Elad's questions. Has he done anything wrong? I'm so sick of this stuff, dude. But you know what the problem is? If I were to walk away, if I were to not cover this kind of stuff, these people take back over and they lie about everything. So here we go, baby, from the New York Times. New York Times sues Pentagon over First Amendment rights. The lawsuit said the Department of Defense's new set of rules for journalists violates the Constitution's guarantees of due process, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press. Cry more, you pathetic losers. Such scumbaggery. Here we go. Look at me. There's my name. There's my name in their stupid lawsuit. I don't know if I can, but I'd love to file an amicus brief in defense of the DOD on this one because they dared to lie about me. And I would just like to say, the New York Times is lying in this lawsuit, and they're smearing me to do it. Let me read you Section 52 from the scumbag liars at the New York Times. Actually, let me do this. Let me show you. In the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, look, obviously it's going to go to some wackaloon lefty judge anyway. They say Julian E. Barnes of the New York Times Company versus the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth and Sean Parnell. Here's my name. Section 52. New PFAC recipients include the National Pulse, which was described by its editor-in-chief as an industry mag site for the MAGA world, Laura Loomer, an influential pro-Trump activist, and former Congressman Matt Gaetz, President Trump's one-time choice for Attorney General of the United States, who is now affiliated with One American News. Many have expressed ideological support for the Trump administration or indicated they do not intend to report critically on the Pentagon. For example, Libby Emmons, the editor-in-chief of Human Events, and the post-millennial who requested 4 passes for her staff, after, quote, receiving an unsolicited invitation to apply for credentials, stated that, quote, there should be a place for reporting on what they are doing without always trying to expose the dark underbelly. Keep my friend's name out your mouth, too. And Tim Pool who disclosed that his outlet would be getting a credential, explained that his is, quote, not an investigative news organization, and he did not intend to maintain a significant presence at the Pentagon. And? Why is that included at all? I'm not an investigative news organization. We're not. And we do not intend to maintain a significant presence at the Pentagon. Yes, no office. We applied for press credentials so we can sometimes ask questions. And you know what it is? This cabal, the media industry, the cultists who demand conformity, threatened people. If you don't get in line with us, we'll come after you next. Well, I've never rightly cared for what they thought about me in the first place because they're a bunch of smarmy scumbags who think they're smarter than everybody. But I want to point this out. When they highlight Libby Emmons saying you not to always expose the underbelly, that's, whatever the quote is. These are the examples. Many have expressed ideological support or indicated they do not intend to report critically. Then they loop my name into it for simply saying what we're doing. Here's Google. Tim Pool, Pentagon. Here's what Google's AI overview says. Tim Pool is associated with the Pentagon through his media company, Timcast Media, which signed a new Pentagon press policy and is now part of the Pentagon Press Corps. However, Pool stated his company would not maintain a significant presence there, and he would prioritize the public's right to know if a major story conflicted with press policies. The inclusion of Pool and other conservative outlets in the press corps has been noted by several news organizations. They say Tim Pool's media outlet Timcast was included in the Pentagon's new press corps list, along with other conservative-leaning news organizations. Following the announcement, Pool indicated that his company would not maintain a significant presence at the Pentagon, citing that he is not an investigative reporter and does not anticipate frequently encountering situations that would conflict with press policies. Why are you including me in your BS? Tons of people got press passes before for one-off questions. He stated that if a major story did conflict with press policies, his company would prioritize the public's right to know. So what is this lie? They say that we are not going to report critically or that we're expressing ideological support. I never said that. I said, you want to know what happened? You want to know what happened? I said, hey, Lisa, she does a booking. Can we get Pete Hegseth or any higher ups from the DOD? I mean, we have a lot of contacts with these guys. Now they're in the administration. Like, wow, never thought we'd be here. I'd like to have him sit down and tell us in his words what's going on. 60 Minutes does exactly this, right? No, but we're not allowed to do it. Only they are. This is how it's always been. Only they are allowed to be journalists asking questions. When I do, they spit in my face. They spit in your face as if I'm not allowed to sit down and ask questions. And you know what's funny? I interviewed Donald Trump before the election. He promised no involvement in Yemen. And then we got involved in Yemen. And people used that and said, remember when Tim Pool interviewed Trump and Trump said this? Look at that. He went back on his word. I'm not here to be for or against. I'm here to ask, state your position. And this is what happened. I said, can we get Hegseth or someone at the DOD? And she's like, I'll reach out to him. Someone who works there reached out to us that we knew. We have a lot of contacts. We're in the D.C. area, and said, it's too difficult, but what if you guys came to the Pentagon, set up and did your show, live interview, talking about news and conflict with Pete Hegseth, or if we can't get him somebody else, what if you did that? And I said, bro, that would be amazing. Absolutely. We'll get our mobile equipment and we'll sit down and we will do this interview. And I said, okay. Now they claim I would report critically. Bro, Trump sits down with adversarial press all the time. What? We're not allowed to interview him either? No, they just lie. They lie. That's what they do. They're liars. They always lie. Everything's a lie all the time. And so, over the past couple of weeks, I was like, let us know what we need to do to get it set up to do Timcast IRL live from the Pentagon. That'd be great. And then we'd be able to get some high profile. I invited Luke Rudkowski. You think he's going to go easy on the Pentagon guys? Ridiculous. We brought Luke on with Kash Patel, and Luke argues with them, and they're willing to do it. These are sit-down, raw conversations. So when we go And when we do our podcast, I'm bringing anti-war, anti-intervention, libertarian-esque anarcho, whatever Luke calls himself, Luke Rudkowski. Heck, maybe I'll invite Michael Malice because we're going to get day passes. And so they said, apply for press credentials so you can come and do it. I said, okay. They sent us this paperwork and it said, don't solicit classified information. And I was like, why would I solicit classified information during a podcast? What am I like? Hey, Pete, welcome to the show. Can you tell me the position of all of our troops in the Caribbean? And he's going to be like, no. I'm like, okay. I don't think anyone's going to care. It's ridiculous. And so the media runs these smears, and then they try to insult me. They say earlier this week, the department held its first in-person press event at the Pentagon. In welcoming what she called official new members of the Pentagon Press Corps, Pentagon Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson specifically focused on the department's preference for their First Amendment activities. She criticized journalists and news organizations like plaintiffs who had previously held PFACs, calling them propagandists who stopped telling the truth. And she praised those the department had selected to cover the Pentagon, asserting that they actually reach Americans, ask real questions, and don't pursue a biased agenda. Similarly, in determining when solicitation of unapproved information is permissible, the department had already drawn distinctions based on favored and disfavored content and speakers, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. Any one of these organizations could have signed the press agreement, and anyone could read it. They're lying to people because they know no one's going to read it. So I mentioned this guy that I talked to in the poker room. I actually would argue Ken, you're my best friend in the poker room. I mean that somewhat as a joke a little bit, but it's kind of true. He's always arguing with me, but he's a very funny guy, and I actually think we get along very well. And then one day he came in wearing a beanie and took a picture with me. So we don't have to agree on everything, and he doesn't have to like me, but he's a good dude. We get along. And he asked me about this, and it's funny. Everybody knows him. He's a very political guy. He's a liberal, but he says he's not because he's always been a conservative guy, right? But he asked me about signing this loyalty pledge. And I was like, did you read it? And he's like, I read the news. And I'm like, you need to read what I signed. The two things you're talking about, it says that I won't solicit classified information. And if we receive classified information, we'll request a comment before reporting it. That's it. And I publicly stated, we're not investigative reporters. We're not going there to have an office. We're not going to be sitting in the office and coordinating or anything. Literally, it's to do a podcast one time. Elad's going to go in for press briefings, same he does as the White House. And I publicly said before any of this even went down, should we get information that conflicts with the press policies, we will prioritize the public's right to know over the press policies. They can seize the press passes from my whole company. What is it? It's a couple. We have production people have press passes. But reporter-wise, I think it's mostly just Brandon and Elad. And then we do have people like production crew stuff who have passes for setting up cameras and whatever. I think Tate also got one. They can take every one of those passes for all I care. They can say, you're never allowed to come back. Okay. Fine. I never expected to have an office in the Pentagon anyway. I'm just sick of it, man. Right now, in our political space, you've got Candace Owens taking a dump all over the floor, vomiting everywhere, burning Turning Point to the ground. Hey, look, I got my beef with Turning Point. It's not like we're enemies or anything like this. I don't want to make it seem like I'm beefing with Turning Point. Jack is a great friend of the show, and he's a good man and a good friend. Benny as well. And I say we're still on good terms, but obviously we weren't invited, and there was a bit of a squabble. They invited us back. We're not going. It is what it is. Turning Point has its issues. It's having a hard time without Charlie. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But to try and destroy the coalition right as we get into the midterms, it's insane to me. And I'm standing here being like, there are very few of us, in my opinion, that are actually saying, can we win? And you know what? Maybe I'm not right about everything. Obviously, you've got the woke right versus trad con, neocon, whatever's going on too. At least in this debate, it's a question over the future of the coalition. Is Nick Fuentes allowed or not? And my response is, yeah, he represents a lot of bad things, but I'm willing to work with anybody on key issues, be it Cenk Uygur, Nick Fuentes, Dave Rubin, or otherwise, and not on others. And so the question then is, what is the future? So it's breaking apart. You've got this fighting. And then Candace is just milking pure speculative garbage. And she crossed the line when she put out a tweet saying, ask a refund from this godforsaken organization. It's just like, you really are just trying to burn down the coalition. So forgive me for being black-pilled, jaded, or otherwise. I have fun doing what I do. And this, therapy sessions, call it what you want, whinging on the internet. So when I wake up and see the New York Times is besmirching my good name and my friends because they're whiny little bitches, I say, keep my name out your mouth. You're liars. But it doesn't matter. They're going to lie and they're going to get away with it. And I'm sure the stupid court in D.C. is going to be like, yeah, you have to be allowed in the Pentagon. So dumb. Nobody is guaranteed anything. It's so stupid. Do the real work, you whiny babies. I'm not trying to rehash all the stupid Candace stuff. It's just the most demoralizing thing ever. I said it before. When she was doing all this stuff, it's 3 months now. And I'm like, wow, how demoralizing that this is what people care about. Look, I want the truth, Tim. Bro, she's lying to you. Making up weird vagaries and crackpot BS. But you know what? For a while, in the beginning, I'm like, I hold my tongue a little bit. Even when I went to Turning Point, they were being nice about it to her on IRL. And now she's outright implying that they killed him, and I'm just like, why be a part of this? Why be aligned with any of these scumbags? Is this what you want? Bro, I'll make videos about Magic the Gathering and skateboarding to make a living. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start doing, we really are. I'm going to do travel vlogs, and I'm going to talk to you about the greatest waffle shop in Las Vegas when I go. And I'm going to say, oh boy, look at the real maple syrup. And you know what? The Tim Pool Show, where I talk about kind of whatever I want, new channel we just launched, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes politics, video reactions, talked about some twerking girl at a poker thing controversy, 30, 40,000 views, maybe 60. I talked about overpopulation. You know, I'm going to tell you this, my friends. If I walked away from all of these political lying scumbags, I'm not saying you, I'm not saying everybody, there's a lot of good people, mostly good people. I could go right off into the sunset and make a living. And people get mad at me when I say this. Because, I don't know, people get mad that I bring up, I don't have to be involved with these scumbags. My point is this. I am no leader. I am no president. I am no general. I'm just somebody who hates liars. There are a lot of things in this world I'm interested in talking about. I'm going to talk about solar storms later. But what really grinds my gears and lights the fires within me is when people lie, and it's provably a lie. And Candace is doing just that. The New York Times is doing just that. And I'm not okay with it. I got no problem calling out each and every one of these conservatives who is taking money to promote gambling websites based in Indonesia or wherever that company was, to promote soda, to promote India's trade interests. It's just all fake. You know? And here we are. And then I go outside, and I tell you, the reason why I bring up Candace in this context, there's two things that really irk me. When I go, and I'm sitting at, I tell you this, guys, this is real life. I mentioned it's the poker room because that's where you're hanging out and talking with the boys. But to be honest, I overhear and we have conversations at restaurants, and, you know, I hang out with some friends who are not political and they're talking about this stuff. But I hear two things. Candace is right about everything. And then I ask them, I'm like, oh, what did she say? I'm not kidding. And they like, I don't know. I had one guy was like, what do you think about Candace? And what about her? And like, do you think she's right? And I was like, right about what? And they're like, that Israel killed Charlie and now she's in hiding. And I was like, she never said that. And they're like, what do you mean? And then Candace tweets like, I never said that. But that's exactly what she wants these people to think. And I hear it in the wild. And then I hear about the loyalty pledge because the media is doing the exact same thing. So she gets the game. I don't play that game, and I'm not interested. So I'll talk about solar storms and whatever I feel like talking about, and we'll see where we go. That's why last night for Timcast IRL, we opened with talking about the drunken raccoon. It was basically an FU to the industry. And it's a funny story. I'm going to wrap it up there. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Thank you all so much for being loyal subscribers and watching the videos that I put out. It means a lot to me because maybe you feel the way I feel about all this stuff. I'll see you on the next segment.